Dear calibration colleagues, my name is Ingo Torvest. I'm coming from Germany and I'm working for Boehringer Ingelheim, which is a pharmaceutical company. Today I would like to talk about the requirements that we as a regulated process industry have on the DCC. So why should this be interesting for you to listen to? So if you take a look on the stakeholders in the process of calibration, we typically talk about the manufacturing companies, which are the customers for any calibration. And these calibrations are done by either accredited calibration laboratories, getting their calibrations again from the NMIs for their reference standards, as well as the calibration service companies, which are non-accredited, but who get their reference standards calibrated by the accredited calibration laboratories. So these are the typical stakeholders in the whole process. And when we look on the numbers of calibrations which are done from each part of these stakeholders, and I can only talk about my own company, Boehringer, which is doing a lot of calibrations worldwide. We talk about calibrations which should be documented later on in DCCs. So the numbers of calibration in our company is about 100,000 calibrations per year that we perform in our worldwide sites. So a certain number of these are done by our own calibration technicians in our own systems. So about half of these calibrations, meaning 50,000, are done in our own systems in a digital way. So we are not talking about these ones, but we talk about the rest. So we talk about the calibrations coming from external, either from accredited calibration laboratories, which is about 30,000 calibrations per year, meaning we talk about 30,000 DCCs that we expect. And from the non-accredited calibration service companies, which is about 20,000 per year. So, and if you have a look on the triangle that was given by our National Metrological Institute in Germany, the PTB, there is a factor of the number of calibrations coming down from the top of the triangle, from the NMI, to the specific instruments which are calibrated in our industry. There's a factor of 10,000 in between. So if we go back to our 100,000 calibrations per year that we need to do, this breaks down to the NMIs for only 10 DCCs per year. And for the DCCs going from the accredited calibration laboratories to our service providers, it's about 100. Yeah? So if you look to the requirements, what should be in the DCC, you have to look to the big numbers of the calibrations which are done. And this is this area here. So we talk about our requirements coming from us and the requirements from the accredited calibration laboratories and the calibration service companies as well. So, and furthermore, this project, which I would like to present today, is not only done by Boehringer, but it was done by a couple of companies. So we combined some end users. So it's not only Boehringer, but also GlaxoSmithKline, also a global player in pharmaceutics, and Novartis. Then we had a system provider, which is called BMAX from Finland. Then we had encryption and business specialists coming from the Aalto University in Finland. And we also collaborated with the German NMI, the PTB. So the results of this project, which has taken about 6 months, is now going to be presented here. So what is our issue? So for all these 50,000 calibrations that we get from external providers, these calibrations are documented typically on paper or delivered on PDFs. So if we want to digitalize these documents, then we have two possibilities. Either we scan it and attach it as a PDF to our in-house computerized calibration management system, the CCMS, or we enter the data manually into the CCMS, which is a big effort. So in the first case, these data are not processable anymore. So you cannot, let's say, read and process and analyze the data coming from a PDF. And in the second case, if we enter the data manually, not to our CCMS, so we have a lot of media breaks in. So we have to read out from a paper and you have to put it into another system. So there's a lot of possibilities to make failures on that. So in both cases, let's say we have a data integrity problem and a compliance problem. So why do we need the DCC then? So the DCC is the very first opportunity for us to use a global standard, to give these global standard to all calibration service providers, either accredited or non-accredited, and to let them do their documentation for us in a digital way so that we can use these digital data directly, integrate them into our CCMS, avoid any media breaks, and with this possibility, we avoid no data integrity leaks, we avoid compliance problems that we have. So in the end, we really add value to our product safety, which is our ticket to the markets later. So we talk about half of all our calibrations, which we want to do in the DCC. So what are these pharma requirements now that we have identified? So when we talk about our calibrations, and this is us, so we are the customers for any calibration service providers. And these are the service providers, the vendors. So typically we have some requests for the vendor to include SOPs, so that means standard operating procedures. So procedures, how to calibrate, requirements where the ranges are described or the accuracy that we need, and so on. So the start of the whole process is the requirements which goes from us to our vendors with instructions and requirements for data and ranges. So, and what we call this DCR, Digital Calibration Request. And this is not in the scope of NMIs. NMIs only take, let's say, some norms and calibrate instruments according to the norms. Here in this case, and this is the majority of all the calibrations that we need, we give the requirements to the vendors. And we may also add a DCA, which is a digital calibration answer. So this is a communication letter that we send to the vendor. And in the end, the vendor does the calibration, and the calibration result comes with the DCC. Here we have the DCC now. And he may also add a DCA, so a communication letter to that. So we now talk not only about a DCC, but also about a DCR and a DCA. And we need to identify the requirements for all of these documents. So we started to identify use cases. Typically, we have two use cases in our industry. So there is an off-site calibration where we send out the instruments to an external lab with the requirement for calibration, or our contractors come into our sites and do in-field calibrations within our process landscape. So what we did is to identify all this process, so coming from really end to end, the full process for the calibration. We also looked about the data mappings. So what data will be generated in which phase of this DCC end-to-end process. We looked about the definition, what do we consider to be raw data or original data, primary records, yeah? What do we consider to have as metadata? We talked about true copies and all these, let's say, needed definitions, and to really identify exactly what we need from the DCC. And we did that together with GSK, with GlaxoSmithKline and Novartis, and put that into a white paper, which is at the moment an internal white paper, but which is used by PTB or by BMEX or other companies to really program a DCC later on. So here you can see the end-to-end process. Down here, it's a very comprehensive process. This is the full process, really going from the requirements that we send out to the vendors until the vendor does the calibration and then sends back the DCC to us. Here it's us again, yeah. And I only made a little excerpt from that. This is the process flow from the DCC, which comes to us, into the pharmaceutical company and within our company. So that happens in the company when the DCC arrives. I do not want to go into details, just to let you know this process is now really identified in detail. And at the outcome of all of these, we identified also the DCC contents, the DCR contents, and we also talked about already about the DCA contents. Here you can see the DCC, and these are all the data points that we need to have in the DCC. These are all the data points that we need to have in our requirements, in our request to the contractors. And you see here also we talked about timestamps that we need for data integrity reasons. So it's really discussed and aligned in detail. And I think this is a very good start to start programming a DCC tool, which is in the end the one that we get from our contractors. So if you like this approach, maybe you also like to express some addings, some feedback or anything. So if you would like to give us any input, and join us for the voyage into the digital world now. So you are really welcome, and just give me an information if you would like to help us in any way. Here are my contact data, and that's all from my side for today. And hopefully you like this presentation, and we can discuss it in the conference in October. Bye-bye.